Hi, guys. Hello and good afternoon. Hope you guys are well and excited about today's session. So today I have a feeling it's going to be me because for some reason we have not been able to. I think our guest is having some technical issues, so we will just carry on with the topic, and we're going to try and cut this short today. So, but what you guys would do in order to make this an interesting session for us, let's start to put in our question and answers where it should be, and I'll be able to answer as many of your questions. So you guys will have me today talking you guys through the do's and don'ts of conducting a stellar customer interview. So as I haven't had anything prepared for this, I'm just going to talk basically from experience and speak directly from the heart like I used to. So when you're conducting, what are stellar interview, what are customer interviews, and when exactly do you need to conduct customer interviews? So in different roles that you have, at different times within your, as you're working, as you're doing different things, regardless of what profession you're doing. So you could be a developer, you could be a digital marketer, a business analyst, a product designer, or a data analyst, whatever profession you're running. The understanding what you need to do, understanding who the customer of what you are trying to create is actually important. And the way you get the requirement that is needed from these customers, it depends on the way you ask it, the way you ask the question. So I have people that would you're interacting and then you're just basically asking questions that are just very extremely closed ended, and then I'll just give you a yes or a no answer. But then if you want something that is a lot more open ended, where you can really get the view of the person, then you try to bring more open ended questions. But with open ended questions, you also want to make sure that your questions are very specific. So you are asking a question that the person really understand the context, they understand what you want to achieve from that question, and they understand at the end of the day that, okay, they fully understand the question so that they can actually give you the appropriate answer to the question. So there are many times where, especially within the sessions that we have, you have people that are asking questions, and sometimes we're like, we don't really understand. Is this what this person is trying to say, or is that what that person is trying to say? And that's because sometimes you have to have the power of asking questions in a way that is easy for people to understand. So how do you do that? The first thing you need to do is to really think about, what exactly, what answer do I actually want to this question? Why am I asking this question? I think that's basically why am I asking this question? For what reason do I need the answer to this question? So if you understand that, okay, I need the answer to this question because I want to be able to fill this particular gap. And then that allows you to understand, okay, what is the best way for me to state what I'm trying to ask, and also states the situation and states the context. And before you press that send, you look back at your question and you try to look at it out. If you don't know anything about this particular subject matter, and then you see this question, would you be able to answer it? So if your answer is yes, then you believe that, okay, you've asked a question that someone will actually understand. So that's the first thing. You want to make sure that for whatever question you are asking, it has to be a question that whoever is getting that question asked to them would understand the context of that question in the first place. Now, when you're then looking at, okay, so now I understand, I've already created an interesting question. I've asked the question in the exact way that I want to ask it for this person to be able to answer. The next thing you need to now start to think about is, for what reason, do you understand, does this particular person, what interest will the person have in answering this question? Are they the exact target audience for that particular question in itself? Because there's no point in you having a question that you need to ask an astronaut and you are asking a digital marketer that question. Then you are already, however beautifully constructed that question is, if you're asking the question to the wrong audience, then the chances of getting the right answer would be difficult. You understand? That would be very, very slim. So you have to also understand that, am I asking my question to the right person? So this is so if we go back to what we've said, construct your question in the right manner. And we talked about how to construct your questions in the right manner. Then the next thing is for you to think about the audience in which you are asking the question to. So you can't ask someone that wouldn't have an idea of the answer, and the chances of them being the right person to answer that question is slim, and then you're asking them that question, then you obviously know that it's going to be quite difficult for them to say this is the answer to that. So once you have that, um, the next thing for you to then do is to rein in on those answers that have been given, and then you look at that and see if there are further questions for you to ask. And with that, those are kind of like steps in which you use in conducting, like an interview. So based on the answer the person has given to you, yeah, something is going to strike a chord. And based on that, you want to probe further. And so you put all of that in, and this could be within the same minutes, within while the person is answering the question. And this is how presenters, this is how people that interview, this is what they do. They come up with their own question that they want to ask, and then based on the answers that the person has provided, and we've seen this time and time again on the different news channels and different things that we watch, and based on the answer that the person is given, something just struck a chord, and based on that, you're like, okay, I want to probe further into this particular area, because this area, remember the very first goal that we are trying to achieve, this area would get us into a deeper knowledge within that particular goal. So then that allows you to then construct another sort of question that keeps going deeper and deeper. And for me, this is what business analysts will classify as a root cause analysis, or because you keep going the why question. But instead of saying why, you are taking the answers to the questions that they are answering, and then you are probing further within that particular answer into a more deeper question. And before you know what is happening, you will realize that all the level of the onions are beginning to peel, and you get to the end. So that is basically how if you guys understand my analogy, if you understand the steps that I've given, if you can follow that step and look at that whenever you want to conduct an interview. So, and this goes in, it doesn't even have to be, we'll come to the customer interview in a second. But what I'm saying right now doesn't even have to be just customer interview. It could be the fact that you want to interview a stakeholder, you have a project you want to understand, you've done your research, but then you still have some questions. But for you to be able to get the right answer to that question that you ask, so that at the end of the day, you could actually create the appropriate thing and meet the requirements that this particular stakeholder has set for you, you have to make sure that you are asking those right questions and it's the right person that is in the room. So that is that in terms of, so now why do we um so if we go back to the question in itself, what are the do's and don'ts for conducting a customer interview? So now we understand how to conduct an interview, we understand how to ask a question. But when it then comes to conducting the interview in itself, what do you do to conduct the interview? So you have to make sure that this person that I'm talking to, what is the best medium to conduct this interview? So today I had an interview actually. So I was interviewed by a platform that I admire. And for you to come into that platform, you have to be interviewed into the platform. And I felt like, okay, the way they were going to interview me was going to be by a video interview or something, because I felt that was what it was going to be, like maybe on a Zoom call. But their model is actually a recorded telephone call. And the reason why they've chosen that is because they feel like it makes people a lot more relaxed, and it allows their personality to show. And the goal in which they want to get at the end of the day is for you to be your true self. And they believe that on the video, you might not be your true self. But if they're doing an audio interview using, like your normal telephone call, then you could be wherever is comfortable for you to be able to answer the questions that they want to give to you. So as you could see, They understand who their customer was. They understand the medium, which is the next thing. You understand the medium in which you want to be able to reach that customer. And you have to understand that that medium has to align with the entire goal you want to achieve at the end. The entire goal they want to achieve is they wanted me to be my true best self. So that means that I can pick, if it happens that my bedroom is the best place for me to be in to do this interview, and that is where I'm going to be my true self, then that's where I'm going to be. If it's my office that I want to, so I then get to choose where, because they've given me an opportunity to be my true self. So when you're conducting customer interviews, you have to think about it. Will everybody be comfortable to have a video review, or to have will everybody be comfortable to type very, very long questions and long answers? So is it better for me to give them yes, no, sort of, and then have just a little bit of open-ended question? So, and all of that, if there's no one size fits all, it just depends on the type of customer and the purpose of why you want to interview those customers in the first place. So I'm hoping that you guys are getting what I'm trying to pull out here. So this is going to be something that is for different use cases, depending on your own use case, depending on why you want to actually perform that customer interview. The steps you're going to take is still going to be the same, but then the medium you're going to use is going to be different. So the steps you're going to take, like we've been talking about, but in terms of the medium, do I want a medium in which it could be a physical space that I want these people to meet in, and then I'm asking them questions. So interviews, like as you guys have noticed, is performed in multiple ways, as we've been discussing. Right now, you guys are going to be asking some questions in the Q&A. It's basically interview, because you're asking me questions that you want me to answer. So imagine if I'm a customer of yours and those questions are things that are going to help what you are trying to achieve, then you are already conducting, you're already perfecting the do's of performing a customer interview. But then if it happens that the best medium to actually ask this question is something that wouldn't resonate with me, you understand, or is something that um, would be very, very disruptive, um, and that could be in a situation where, for a talk like this, is always better that everybody is muted, which is why webinar platforms like this are interesting, as you automatically just, no one even has the power. All the power belongs to the host to be able to bring you on. So this allows for an interesting medium for us to have this conversation. But in a situation where what we want to ask requires everyone to be able to talk and to be able to interact and speak and be able to, share their own full opinion without having it in such an orderly manner, then Zoom will probably be a better place to conduct that sort of interview, because then you would have the power yourself to unmute yourself and be able to talk. And so the medium in which you perform your interview ends up showcasing how your interview is achieved at the end of the day, the outcome of your interview. So if the medium you perform that interview doesn't resonate with the person, then you won't be getting, the effects that you want. And after you have done this interview, after you have received all what you want from this person, and you have drilled down, you've gotten all the additional questions, you have to now look at everything, summarize at the end of the day, summarize back to the person to say, so far, what we've been saying is this, that. So one, what does that do? It allows the person know that you were listening to them and all the things that they've said has been taken into account. Two, it allows any misconception. So where there's something that the person has said in a particular context and you have written it down in a different context, then you have the opportunity to be able to, for the person to be able to make changes and say, no, not exactly. You didn't get that quite right. What I meant was blah, 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 blah. So it's important for you to summarize this at the end of this interview that you've performed. So let's just iterate. You have to prepare by asking the right questions. To ask the right questions, you have to ensure that you are asking the right questions within the right context, and you are asking the right questions to the right person. Then the second thing is, so you're preparing, you already have what you want to ask. If it's something that you need to send the question ahead, send the question ahead. If it's something that you need to ask on the spot, then ask on the spot. But you will determine that depending on the type of user. So the second thing is know the user, and maybe because the user has to be the right target audience, and then know the best medium to meet this user. Is it going to be face to face? Is it going to be a coffee? Is it on a platform? Is it virtual? Is it, all of that? You decide all of that and make sure that they know what you've decided. You've sent everything ahead of time so that your meeting prepare all that is still within your preparation, so that your meeting preparation and so that when it comes to that interview in itself, everything will go smoothly. The third thing is then performing the interview. So in performing the interview, you are asking those questions that you've already prepared, but then you are looking out for their answers, because the answers that they give to you will automatically lead to a different question that you would have to ask. And this will help you drill down until you get to a very, very good place in the goal that you set for this particular interview. And then lastly, after all the interview, you iterate everything that has been said back to them in terms of a summary to say, this is what we've spoken about, just like I'm doing right now. This is what we've spoken about so far. So in a situation where the person, there's something else that the person feels like, no, you didn't get that quite right, they're then able to make changes. So those are the do's, and everything else I haven't said and basically I've alluded to will probably be the things that you need to start to stay away from. You understand? Like not properly preparing, not sending your meeting invitations ahead of time. If it's someone that is in a senior position, you understand that they don't have time. Time is their biggest problem. They don't have time. So what that means is that you need to make sure that they probably have these questions ahead of time so they could prepare for what they're going to answer. You also, you also have to then understand that if it's going to be somewhere that is virtual, have time in which you guys are going to have the technical checks so that technical difficulties don't come in the way. If it's going to be somewhere that is physical, arrive on time, ensure that it is not a noisy environment that allows this, interview to actually flow properly. And then once you're trying to conduct that interview, make sure that the person is comfortable. Make sure that your questions are direct. Where your questions, so don't ask indirect questions that pretty much do not make the person fall off the track, and stay focused to the sort of questions that you're asking. And at the end, ensure that you summarize, like you said. Don't make the mistake of just saying, it was lovely meeting you, and then you go. You have to make sure that you summarize what they've got so that you could take notes of any misconceptions that might have happened, and also allow the person to feel like they have been valued. So all of that are the important steps. So let me take some of the questions you have. And like I mentioned, we are going to close this session quite early. So after answering these questions, that will be it, because I think it's a very, very straightforward topic. So what this is from Jarvis. He's saying, what's the best way of transferring issues from customer interviews to the product backlog? What orders the priority? Okay, so this is so I believe that he's talking from when you are developing a product, and then customers, you are doing something. And this is very, very good question, because for you to develop the ultimate product, you have to be taking everything from your customer's perspective. It has to come from, the best products that we have today are customer led. Now, what tends to happen is that most organizations have what we call an open roadmap, where they allow the customers to give feedback. So you allow customers to be able to, they're using your product, they find an issue, you idea, or if a feature request, or if it's something that's a bug, then the customers are able to basically um, log that bug for the design team or the development team or support team to actually take that on and fix that. So, to this question, what's the best way of transferring issues from customer interviews to the product backlog? What you have to do as a company, or what we do, is the fact that what the customers have mentioned goes into your roadmap. You decide as a team on the best thing, if those things that the customers have said would actually improve your product in itself? And if the answer is yes, there's going to be a deliberation with the product owner to accept that into development. That then goes into your backlog. The depending on what that particular feature is that the customer that has come out of your customer interview, that's where you determine if it's something that needs to be high up your priority or it just needs to sit in the background. You figure out the appropriate way. So it doesn't have to come in one order of priority because you really don't know um, what sort of answers are coming out at the back of this interview. But if it's something that is actually critical, they are using this product and they are like, and it's allowing you lose a lot of customers, then it's something you need to feature very, very high within your product backlog. But that is for the product owner to then decide on how that is going to fit within that backlog. Jarvis, I hope that answered your question. If it doesn't, then please say something within the chat. And if you guys have any more questions, this would be lovely to start asking the questions now. Another question here is from Ayodeji. How do you handle um, difficult or sensitive topics that may come up during an interview? This is another good one. So for difficult or sensitive topic, depends. Are you the one that is asking? So I'll try to take it both ways. So if you are the one that is asking the customer a sensitive or a difficult question, then you have to give them the how will I put this, the preamble to say that this might be difficult, this might be tough. However, this is the reason why I'm asking this. Because then you won't just ask me, how old are you? What's your date of birth? And I'm like, seriously, that's a personal thing. If I want to tell you, I'll tell you. But then if I understand that the reason why you're asking this is for you to be able to verify something, then I'll be more than willing to give that to you. Or it allows your market research. If I understand that, then that softens how I respond. Because if you asking a customer, you have to remember that you are also a customer of somebody. And when someone's asking you questions that could be sensitive, how would you respond? So you have to assume those sort of responses. So that's why it's always when you see that this could be tricky or it could be a sensitive topic, then you have to make the person understand that, yeah, I realize that this could be sensitive. That's before you ask it. And then you ask the question. And if the person choose, and then you could choose to answer or not. If the person choose not to answer, then you have to understand and respect that they choose not to answer that. But then if you are the receiver and someone has just bluntly asked you a very sensitive question, it now depends on how you want to address it. So could it be something that you are comfortable to be able to say, um, yeah, that is personal. However, I would say this, but not go too deep. You have that. Or you could just say, could you move on to the next question as I wouldn't want to answer those sort of questions. So we have to understand that we are within our rights to be able to do that. So the way you handle it without being disrespectful to the next person is being handling it truthfully, which is if it's too sensitive and it's something that you're not happy to share, then you say you're not happy to share, and they will have to respect your decision on not happy or not being happy to share. But if you are the one conducting, then the rule of thumb is you make the person aware beforehand that this is going to be asked, so they can decide, if they are going to answer it, and you don't embarrass yourself by asking the question and you get shut down. So that's how I hope that answered your question, Ayodeji. And we have another question here that I'm going into. So follow up, at what stage is the SDLC? In the SDLC, do you recommend customer interviews? So for those of you that might not know what SDLC is like basically software development life cycle. I really think that in the very, very beginning, and also it's something that also has to carry on as you go along, because your product will constantly change. And your product is changing not because you want to just change the product. Your product is changing because technology is very fast. People are experiencing different things. And like a very, very good product is never finished. It's something that constantly iterates. And because it constantly iterates, it's iterating not because the how will I put it? the company likes to develop or they like to build. It's iterating because the customers demand and the need for what the customer really need to solve. Because remember, you are creating like Tech1M in itself is an hiring platform. The whole aim of this is to simplify the hiring process. And you simplify one area, want to simplify another area. So it means that the hiring process constantly, is evolving. As it's evolving, you are finding a solution. But then new technologies are coming out that is also allowing you solve that in a better way. So to fulfill your ultimate vision, it could mean that you have to then constantly start to, make steps like changes to the things that you've developed. And that's why you see, I felt my Apple phone was already very, very good. But yesterday I got an update. Then when I updated, I'm like, whoa, I can now build different widgets on my home screen. That's amazing. Of course, that's something that's come out of some user research and some customer interviews and has made them feel like this technology is available. We could put that into this and it will make our users love their phone more. And and all of that is the way businesses think. So at every stage within the software development life cycle, there will be research done, but the concentrated areas are at the beginning because you want to make sure that the idea you have, you want to test it out with the customers and make sure that that idea actually resonates before you build the wrong thing. Then at the end of, you have your planning before you go into developing those plans as well. It's always good to also still test it out as you are building different you're going through different sprints and you're having your demo as you have your release. That's why you have the beta that you are bringing in just a few people to be able to use and give you multiple feedbacks as well. So those are other ways of, there are indirect interviews, but there are still other ways of getting feedback from your customers. So like I said, it's something that is continuous and it's the way you do it in different stages of the system development lifecycle is just slightly different. So I hope that answers your question, Jarvis. Franklin. Franklin is asking, how do you handle questions from your clients during an interview that you might need some time or research to be able to answer? So, okay, I think I know where this is coming from. So you probably have been asked the question on the spot and you don't have the full context to that sort of question. But then it's an interview and you still have to answer. So then this is where you dig into experiences that you've had. And then you're like, and then you also leave the caveat that, yes, I don't fully understand the context in which you're speaking, but in general terms, this is how I would speak. Or in this other term, in this other domain that I know, this is how I will handle this. And that's how you answer those sort of questions. So if I'm in an interview and someone is basically a customer is asking me, so how do you do this for in something that I have never done, but I've done something in that sort of similar domain, or have done. Okay, so let's say I haven't built anything for the space. I haven't built anything in space, for instance, and someone is then coming in to ask that, so if you it's and I know that this is a space company and I don't really know so much about space, for instance, and the person is asking me how will I get customers into space for them to be able to buy their products in the space. Now I'm like, okay, interesting. How do I won't say, oh, I don't know how to do that, and then I'll stop. But then of course there are multiple ways I'm going to answer the I don't know. Okay, so the whole answer is still I don't know. But then if I go back into myself, is it really true that I don't know? Because the truth is that I know something, I just might not know enough. So what is the thing that I know that I need to be able to answer to this person so that they could actually feel like, this person tried? Because sometimes especially if it's like a job interview, sometimes these are like trick questions just to see how your mind thinks. So the way I would answer that is, oh, space industry, I haven't particularly done anything in the space industry. However, in this particular industry, this is how I would do it, and I'll relate that And I'll tell them in this industry, I'll do this step, I'll do this step, I'll do this step, I'll do this step. And then I'll relate that back to the space. So I'll assume that will work slightly similar to the space industry. But then I know that there will be things that are unique to space that I'll still need to research upon. You get, this is hence coming back to what you needed to do, which was for you to research to be able to answer the question. So I will then come back to the person and say, there are still things within the space that I will need to research upon so that I can further adopt those sorts of processes within the space industry. And the person will think you did a clever job because you have not said no to their question, but you said no in a subtle, beautiful way because you've told them how you would answer that question in a different domain that you fully understand, and then relate that back that with additional research, you'll be able to answer this as well. So, Franklin, I hope that answers your question. Um, this is another one from Jarvis. Follow up. At what stage in the SDLC do you recommend customer interviews? Okay, so I'm hoping that I answered this before. Yeah, sorry, I think I did that already. So I'll mark this as answered. This is another question. How do we make sure we don't lead the customer into giving answers we just want to hear, but instead get true, authentic answers we need? That's such a beautiful question because people, um, if you look at the world, we have a lot of yes, yes, yes people than a lot of people that will actually really tell you the truth. And what you actually need is the truth, and you don't need people to say, oh, your product is amazing when there are like 100 bugs in it. But also, if there are 100 bugs in it, you also want to have a way to know that there are 100 bugs in it without actually feeling that you have built a completely useless product. So there is a balance. So the way the balance works is always going to be a question of the medium. So for you to allow your customers give you the right answers, it depends on how you ask the question. If you ask the question, oh, how well do you like this, whatever, very good, not good, you get, depending on if it's a tough, there are times when those sort of um you know customer satisfaction questions, those CSAT works, and there's sometimes that you want to really go into what are you really experiencing. So you have to be able to determine that what level of detail am I expecting from this customer? And based on that, you need to be able to ask a question in an intelligent way. Probably open-ended questions are what is going to really help you get those sort of authentic answers to serious issues. But to things that it just depends on a feeling, then you could have closed-ended questions, but give a not just a yes or a no, but give multiple array that allows you to see where you fall. And this is where sometimes the review mechanism of the 5 stars sometimes work, and that allows you to see, okay, if this person is rating this at this, but then give them a way to still give you comments that you can then read meaning to why they gave you a 4 star or a 3 star and you were expecting a 5. And because you're able to see those comments, it allows you to know, it allows them to be a lot more authentic. So if you ask the question in not such an authentic way in the first place, you will get a not such an authentic way, because then you are asking a question in a way for you to be, in a way for them to be biased, and you've made the question a yes or a no. Because the person doesn't really think that you're not adding value, but they don't think you're adding enough value. So if you put the array to be a whole lot more, then they will be able to answer authentically within the middle. So I'm hoping that you get what I'm trying to say. So if you have questions that you want your customers to be able to answer and give you authentic answers, then you have to ask your questions intelligently, and you don't have to just ask the questions abruptly. So it's something that you need to sit down, think about the type of customers, think about how these customers think, and the people you want to give this to. And based on that, you think of the best medium, you think of the best, the best question, and look at the options you are giving to them if it's a closed-ended. And if it's an open-ended, and I feel like don't make your entire questions completely closed-ended, because you won't get authentic answers. But then you could have a mixture, especially if it's in a survey, you have a mixture of close-ended and open-ended that allows them to actually pour their heart out. And that is where you really see the authenticity in the answers that your customers give. Um, so Kingsley has a question, and I think we'll use this and wrap up. So, what are some of the best practices for having an excellent customer review feedback? So I think we have touched this earlier, but if you are doing a feedback and you're having customer review, most of the time this is like for instance, we are putting up a review form in here, and if you haven't filled that review form, please make sure you click on that link that has been pinned within the chat and fill it out. And this will really help us, because what we are using that to do as well is to gauge how well we are doing, so we know what more we need to do. Now, to Kingsley's question, he says, what are some of the best practices for having an excellent customer review feedback? So the best practices, like I mentioned, is for you to really understand what is the goal of this customer review feedback. So for instance, if I use the Tech1M one, the goal is that we want to be able to show future people that are coming to say that, okay, this is what the others are saying about this particular session. So it might be worth for you to check it out. And if it's a bad review, then it's for us to be able to say, we're not doing enough. Maybe this is what we need to do to be better, to make this even better. Do you understand? To provide a value. Now, the way in which we have decided to do that is that we have looked at the people that are attending. So that means we know our customers. So those are the best practices. Know the customer first. Who are the people that you want to complete this? So because we know the customers and we understand the goal that we want to achieve, the goal is that we want other people coming in. We want to know how we are doing, but we also want the future people attending this sort of event for them to be able to know that this event is going to be valuable for them. So in order to be able to do that, then we need to show in a way that, okay, this is how we are. So we need to ask our question in those sort of ways. So we chose to have a way in which you have a review form and everybody can, easily do things within the review form. You don't want it to be too long. You want it to be something that they could complete within less than 5 minutes and not feel like it is daunting. When something feels quite daunting, then people wouldn't really, complete it, except you've made it exciting in some ways. You get, so there are interviews you do that are like an hour, but then you can't allow someone with completing a form interview for an hour. Nobody's going to respond to that. But then if you make it fun, if they are, if it's like a video interview, someone else is talking to them, someone else is asking them a question, they're looking here, they're looking there, then they feel more engaged to it. And so they'll be able to answer your questions properly. So that, like in terms of those best practices, knowing the customer is the most important. Then knowing the medium in which you want to ask it, and then making sure that it's not daunting. So not daunting doesn't mean it has to be 100% short, but like the rule of thumb is, if it's going to be something they need to fill out, make it as short as possible. If it's going to be something that you're going to be talking, then just guide it in a way that they have breaks in between, so it doesn't feel like they're talking for an entire hour. So I hope that helps some in some ways. But then, like I mentioned, ask intelligent questions. Intelligence doesn't mean big grammar. Intelligence means that it is direct enough for the person that is going to consume the question to be able to understand the question and be able to answer it appropriately. Anita asks, are such interviews meant to be 100% formal? Anita, when you say such interviews, is this a follow-on from Kingsley, I believe? Um, so the interviews, not all interviews have to be formal. And if that, so I feel like not all interviews have to be formal. An interview can just be having a chat with someone and they're really giving you the feedback. There are many times, in fact, a majority of the feedback that we received, it has come from an informal forum. And this is you just having a chat with somebody that you know that this person is within your target audience and they are really giving you the truth. And based on that, you know how you can, what you do with that is what then changes the cost of your products or the thing that you're working on. So I'm not assuming everybody's working on a product. So I'm trying to be generic in my answers, if you understand. So I think with that, you guys, I think we've spent time to talk about, you know, customer interviews. Interviews are very, very important. You don't know, you're not a mind reader. And for you to really be able to guess what is in the other person's mind and what they feel, you have to figure out a way to get that out one way or the other. And the way you do that is through intelligent questioning, making the person comfortable, and using the best mediums. There are things like Hotjar that wants to see how customers perform on the website and what area is still that is still a form of interview, even though it is a subtle in the background sort of interview, if you understand what I mean. Because you are getting feedback, you are seeing that, oh, customers are always clicking on this area, and when they click on this area they go here, they don't come to this area. So that means that there's something in this area that we need to push a lot of things up there, and that is giving you feedback on how you should perform. Why did I mention that? I'm trying to say that not every single form of feedback is going to be something that the person has to complete something. Sometimes the feedback is an observation. You get your feedback based on observing how people perform to something as well. So this is a topic and this is an area that you would use in every aspect. You would use forever, and it makes you clever. It makes you understand more about how the people that are meant to be relating to the thing that you're building or relating to the thing you're working on, how they're using it. And it brings you closer to them, and it allows founders and product owners to build much more interesting products. If you go out there to all the big accelerators and many of the best companies that you've seen, the best companies are built based on user research. They are built based on the feedback that the customers have given, and they are building those features that are customer led, but without staying away from the true goal of the product in itself. Because a customer cannot just come now and say, "Oh, all right, now Tech1M, I understand that, oh, you're a hiring platform. We now want you guys to start selling fish." And we're like, because all the customers are saying we should start selling fish, we have to create a place on the system to start selling fish. That is not what this is about. You still have to understand what is your own core goal in the first place, and how are those feedback really helping you move closer to that goal. So you assess the feedback that comes in and then see if it's something that should move into development that you should act upon. Okay. And that's why there are so many roadmap tools out there right now that allows people to upvote things. So like these questions right now here, people can upvote this. So it makes that, oh, this upvoting is making me see that quite a number of people want this question answered. So I need to answer that first. I need to answer that question first. And this is also a form of user research as well. So in every areas of our lives, we are performing it one way or the other. But when and we are performing it on us. But when it happens that we have to be the one to listen, and we have to be the one to actually perform it on others, then we need to make sure that we perform those steps that we have talked about. So that brings us to a close today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this session. Sorry, our guest will be here, but I hope I've tried to do a good job in his absence. But we're going to try and get him back on another topic that I'm sure that you guys would get a lot of value from. So until next time, I want to say thank you guys for being here today. And I'll see you guys. I think that's going to be next week, because I believe the one we have on Saturday is not happening. But we will definitely reach out to you so you know when the next mentorship session will be. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a good afternoon and have a lovely weekend. Bye.